Welcome to the Yeshua community. Today's reflection explores a difficult and deeply human question. Why do people walk away from faith because of suffering and injustice?
People don't leave faith because of arguments. They leave because of suffering. Many people have walked away from belief in God, not because they wanted to, but because of what they have seen. They have seen war, they have seen injustice, they have seen human cruelty. Some have lost people they loved, some have experienced pain that feels completely meaningless. And at some point, the question becomes unavoidable. If God is good, why does this exist? And if God is all-powerful, why does he not stop it? For many, the conclusion follows, if God exists and is good, this should not happen. But it does happen. So they conclude, there is no God. This is not a shallow argument. It is not driven by ignorance. It is often born out of experience, out of pain, out of honesty. But what if the conclusion is not the only possible one? What if the problem is not only suffering, but our understanding of justice? Because look at the world as it is. People suffer, people are wronged, people lose everything. And in many cases, nothing is ever made right. A life is taken, and it is never restored. If that is the end of the story, then justice does not exist. Not fully, not truly. At best, we have partial justice, imperfect justice, but not real justice. And if there is no real justice, then what does it mean to say that God is just? So let's follow the logic. If God is just, then injustice cannot simply remain. It must be addressed. It must be judged. Which means judgment is not optional. It is necessary. Because without judgment, there is no accountability. And without accountability, there is no justice. But even that is not enough. Because punishment does not restore what was lost. If someone is harmed, punishing the offender does not heal the victim. And if a life is taken, no amount of punishment can bring that life back. So if justice is to be complete, something more is required. Restoration. But here we reach a limit. What is the restoration for a lost life? What could possibly replace it? Nothing. Unless life itself can be given back. This is where the argument becomes unavoidable. If a life can be taken and never restored, then full justice is impossible, unless death is not the end. Which means if God is truly just, then death cannot have the final word. And if death does not have the final word, then resurrection is necessary. Not as a religious idea, not as tradition, but as a logical requirement for justice. So now the argument turns. It is no longer suffering disproves God, but rather if God exists and is just, then suffering cannot be the final reality. Which means there must be judgment, there must be restoration, and ultimately there must be resurrection. Without these, justice collapses. And if justice collapses, then the idea of a just God collapses with it. But if justice is real, then reality must be larger than what we see now. Now we return to the deeper question. If God exists, why is there so much suffering in the world? Not just a little suffering, but overwhelming, unbearable suffering. War, disease, loss, injustice, and especially human-made evil. This is not a shallow problem, it is one of the deepest challenges to faith. But perhaps the problem is not only suffering itself, but the image we have of God. We often imagine God as a distant king, sitting above the world, in full control, able to intervene at any moment, but choosing not to. And if that is our image, then the question becomes unavoidable. Why does he not act? But this picture is already challenged in the Tanakh. There, God is not only a judge, but one who hears, one who sees, one who responds. God hears the cry of the oppressed. God sees injustice. God is not indifferent. And yet, even in the Tanakh, suffering is not explained. In the book of Job, a righteous man suffers deeply. He asks why, and he is not given an answer. Instead, he encounters God and is confronted with the limits of human understanding. And in the Psalms, people cry out, they protest, they ask, why? This is not weak faith, this is honest faith. Faith that does not deny suffering but brings it before God. And then comes Yeshua, standing within this tradition. He does not explain suffering away. He does not say everything makes sense. Instead, he points to how we respond. Feed the hungry, care for the vulnerable, show mercy. And he speaks of a coming judgment where these things matter. Which means your actions matter, justice matters, How you treat others matters. And what is not resolved here will not be ignored. So perhaps a meaningful belief in God must include all of this. That suffering is real, that injustice is real, that not everything is resolved in this life. That God is not indifferent, but present. And that in the end, there will be judgment. There will be restoration and there will be resurrection. Because without resurrection, there is no full justice. And without justice, faith loses its meaning. This is not an easy belief. It does not remove the tension. It does not answer every question. But perhaps it is a belief that takes both suffering and justice seriously.
Suffering challenges faith, but it also raises deeper questions about justice, meaning, and hope. If God is just, then suffering cannot have the final word. Thank you for listening to the Yeshua community. Until next time, stay thoughtful and stay grounded in what is true.